Finally figured it out. I know what the problem is. The problem is these people are just stupid. I used to think that these people just didn't have any empathy, but that's not the case at all. These people are just stupid. They can't in their minds correlate between two things. They just can't do it. If you tell them something or even maybe just give them a story with facts, they just can't see that perspective. It's like trying to teach a toddler math and you tell them 2 plus 2 equals 4. It's not the fact that it's not true. It's the fact that the toddler just can't see it being true. In the toddler's mind, it just doesn't compute. So you just have to keep telling them over and over until they get it. But these people, no matter how many times you tell them or try to correlate something else to them, they just won't get it because they're stupid. These people lack the ability to put themselves in other people's shoes, which shows a lack of comprehension in every degree. And y'all be like, oh, they're so close to understanding. These people aren't close at all. They are the furthest away, actually. I don't know what's closer, us to Pluto or them to understanding, but y'all let me know what y'all think. I'll see you on the next one. Peace.
So you don't have a problem with gay people at all as long as they are doing it in their privacy of their own home?
Friends, like everybody says, I got friends. But
do you consider yourself religious? Are you Christian?
Yeah.
What if they said that you shouldn't be practicing Christianity outside of your home?
I would fight that.
As a former Republican and someone who lived inside the MAGA world, especially with friends and family still living in it, there are a couple things I'd like to expose about MAGA. And they will absolutely reject it, especially because it's coming from someone who lived that life. The first is detachment from the issue. MAGA's built an entire identity around the appearance of strength. They want you to believe they are the adults in the room. They want a strong man. They define strength as obedience, dominance, and power that can be enforced. But that's not strength. It's insecurity. It's rooted in the fear of being left behind, a fear that their ideology is losing ground, a fear that society is becoming more inclusive, more multiracial, and willing to challenge old hierarchies. And that terrifies them. That makes them hide behind toughness. That's why they mock empathy. That's why they call liberals emotional, bleeding hearts, or overly sensitive. It isn't because we put feelings over facts. It's because MAGA uses apathy as their anchor. If they allowed themselves to engage with the moral and ethical consequences of policies or actions, they would be exposed. Exposed to their own contradictions, exposed to their own tribe, and exposed to questions they're not willing to answer. So caring gets reframed as weakness, and passion about injustice gets dismissed as overreaction. Not because it's wrong, but because vulnerability to truth is something they're too afraid to allow. And the second is the myth of research. I didn't dig when I was a Republican. I conclusion shopped. I searched for information that confirmed what I already believed. I avoided anything that challenged my worldview because discomfort felt like danger. That information machine still exists today. Same talking points, same outrage loops, and same selective facts. But the difference is, I stepped away. I challenged my own beliefs and I let truth shape my opinions instead of bending facts to protect my identity. So when MAGA attacks me, I know exactly why. It's not because I don't understand them. It's because I do. I know how you think. I know how you research. I know how you deflect because I did it. And holding that mirror up makes people uncomfortable. So yeah, you could attack me all you want. I'm still going to expose you because I was once you. And for some silly reason, I still hold hope that people will eventually choose truth over loyalty.
Welcome back to the channel, and I hope you are all doing good. For years, many MAGA supporters believed that they represented a silent majority that had the backing of ordinary Americans from coast to coast. Political rallies were packed, social media feeds echoed their views, and many even felt confident that their movement reflected the feelings of most of Americans. But as political and economic realities continue to shift, some supporters are now expressing frustration after discovering that not everyone shares their concerns or their sympathy. And across social media right now, even in town hall meetings, political forums, there is a growing number of voters who once enthusiastically supported hardline policies, and they are voicing disappointments about the consequences of those same policies. What makes the situation particularly striking is that many of the people now complaining spent years dismissing the concerns of others, and now that difficulties are affecting them directly, they are finding that the public reaction is far less sympathetic than they expected. So let me roll these clips. I'll be back with more commentaries. Stay tuned.
MAGA should really be called Charlie Brown at this point, because Trump is Lucy, and they keep running to kick that football, and then Trump pulls up that football. You know, we had the whole nonsense the other night, the White House correspondence thing, and everyone tweeting out, all the right-wing people, like, you get him that ballroom. You get this man his ballroom, right? And then that's what he made that about. The whole thing was weird. The whole thing was cringe. Made a lot of his followers doubt him because weird messaging. But anyway, Rand Paul and Lindsey Graham just said they're going to put a bill out there tomorrow for us to fund the ballroom now, $400 million. Don't worry, it'll be offset by customs. They are tearing their faces off. And Rand Paul probably could have run for president in 2028 with Massey. Not anymore. They're just like, F you, who the hell are you, who stole your account, what is going on? I have tons of screenshots. I'm going to read them tomorrow. I'm resting today like I'm supposed to. But yeah, these people, but they're pissed because they're just like, you said this was going to be private funding. This is a big deal because not only does it fuck up Rand Paul, I don't know why he decided to get behind this. Everyone hates Lindsey Graham anyway. But Trump's big thing, and the way MAGA have been able to defend it, is it's through private donations. Well, now they want us to foot the bill. Good luck.
So I'm sitting here listening to the radio, and this guy just said, okay, he just said that gas will come down when the war's over. And right before that, he says he doesn't need Congress because there is no war. We live in the dumbest timeline that mankind has ever seen. Because we had people that thought that really thought they were going to get a Doge check. They really thought that. They really thought Doge was real. And they were going to uncover all this waste, fraud, and abuse. And people were going to get arrested. And there's not even a fucking Department of Doge anymore. We had to listen to this guy say he would end the war between Russia and Ukraine before he even took office. And that he was a peacetime president. And if Kamala Harris got in there, we'd go to war with Iran. And look at us right now. How dumb of a fucking timeline do we live in? He called the Epstein files a hoax. A hoax. So I assume Jeffrey Epstein killed himself over a hoax. He just didn't know it was a joke, a trick, or that Obama was doing, or Biden. I mean, he blamed about 3 different people. How is this happening, y'all? Like, is it because they got their garage is full of all the cheap bullshit that they bought, and they can't get rid of all that shit, and nobody in their family will just break rank and just say, look, he's fucking this country up. They just can't do it, or what? I may end up worse than them because this shit's driving me crazy. How long does this have to go on? This guy is the dumbest. He really is. I mean this literally. He is the dumbest person that God ever punched an asshole in. That's who's out front, a jackass. Like they say, you're better off with an army of jackasses led by a lion than you are an army of lions led by a jackass. God.
Surely they're not dumb enough to say it out loud, right? Because it was almost exactly a year ago. I was actually wearing this shirt and hat when I did my most viral video ever on extinction burst. In that video, I pitched a theory that I really didn't expect to be validated out loud. If you're not one of the 13 million people who saw that video, let me catch you up. Extinction burst is a concept from behavioral psychology. It describes a predictable response from people who are exhibiting destructive behaviors when the reward for those destructive behaviors is withheld or interrupted. This response is called the extinction burst. It's a short-term burst of energy, increasing the frequency and intensity of the negative behavior, which is now going unrewarded until the person eventually gives up and changes their behavior. In this video, I described this as what we're seeing from MAGA, a short-term burst in their anger and rage because their anger and rage is no longer delivering the same outcome that it used to. As hard as they fight, non-MAGA people are still getting ahead. And despite their complaints about cancel culture, MAGA behavior is increasingly resulting in negative consequences. But to trigger an extinction burst, there still has to be a specific event that signifies to that group of people when their reward is withheld. Now, it's not rocket science, but in that video, I pinpointed the election of Barack Obama as that triggering event, because it was his election that sparked the Tea Party movement, the birther movement, and ultimately MAGA. These people realized that their quiet hate was no longer sufficient to support the systemic forces that once suppressed candidates like Barack Hussein Obama, so their rage exploded. But until now, this was just my theory, a theory now validated by a speech on stage at the Heritage Foundation. You know, the people who wrote Project 2025?
Because I watched Barack Obama win in this building, that was sort of the beginning of that insanity. And we've lived through that fever dream for the last 10 years, haven't we? With some of those cultural poisons that he foisted upon our nation, maybe because of our guilt, our Christianity, just being nice.
No, I gotta say, I kind of love that they're in the quiet part out loud era, because it is wild to hear a MAGA leader say on stage at the Heritage Foundation that a Christian husband and father of 2 girls, a president who was really a pretty centrist Democrat who just happened to be black, foisted cultural poisons upon our nation in a speech titled "Diversity is Not Our Strength," that is now published on the official Heritage Foundation channel, where he expresses bitter outrage at a Christian for expecting him, as a self-proclaimed Christian, to act like a Christian in the face of diversity. Fact is, these are the people who built today's Republican Party. These are the people leading the religious right. These are the architects of Trump's presidency. And these are the people who carefully crafted J.D. Vance's current preferred identity from a combination of the dregs scraped from the bottom of a public restroom trash can and low-grade polyester batting pulled from the cushions of a sofa found at the local thrift store. These are the people whose beliefs are going extinct. And yes, their burst is long, angry, and full of despair. That's because it's scheduled for deletion. So long as we don't let go and give up the fight to deny their hate the oxygen it needs to survive.
So, many observers right now are pointing out that this is not necessarily about political revenge. Instead, it reflects a broader reality of modern politics. And when people repeatedly tell others to deal with it during difficult times, they should not be surprised when those same words come back around. Political decisions often have consequences that reach far beyond campaign slogans, and voters sometimes discover those consequences only after policies begin affecting their own communities. And one of the biggest shocks for some supporters has been realizing that political loyalty does not guarantee personal protection from economic hardship. And the rising costs of living, job uncertainty, healthcare concerns, and local economic challenges affect people regardless of their political affiliation. And while campaign rhetoric often promises dramatic improvements, governing is far more complicated than campaigning. And the frustration is becoming visible in interviews and even online discussions. Some supporters even say that they feel ignored by leaders that they once defended passionately. Others complain that the promises they believed would transform their lives have not produced the results they expected. And in some cases, they are directing their anger towards the very politicians they previously celebrated. Yes, there are people who argue that this reaction reveals a contradiction. During previous years, many MAGA activists encouraged policies that they believed would affect other groups while leaving themselves untouched. And now that economic and political realities are impacting everyone, they are discovering that government decisions rarely operate with such precision. And policies tend to affect entire communities, industries, and regions rather than only the people they were originally intended to target. Meanwhile, opponents of the movement are responding with a mixture of skepticism and indifference. Some even argue that they spent years warning about potential consequences but were ignored. Others say that they have little patience for complaints from people who previously dismissed concerns about workers, about immigrants, about social programs, or vulnerable communities. But that does not mean every supporter feels the same way. Some continue to stand firmly behind the movement, and they do insist that current difficulties are temporary. Others believe external factors are responsible for economic struggles rather than political leadership. However, there is clearly a growing debate within conservative circles about expectations, about accountability, and whether campaign promises have translated into real world results. Political analysts, they do often note that this pattern is not unique to any one movement. And throughout history, voters across the political spectrum have sometimes supported policies based on emotion, based on identity or hope, only to reassess their positions when outcomes fail to match expectations. And the difference today is that social media allows those frustrations to become highly visible almost instantly. And what we are witnessing may be less about one political movement and more about the reality of democratic politics. Voters make choices, leaders make choices, and consequences follow. Sometimes those consequences are positive, sometimes they are disappointing. But eventually, every political movement faces a moment when supporters ask whether the promises they were given have actually been fulfilled. And as frustrations continue to grow, one thing is becoming clear, that many voters who once felt politically invisible are discovering that public sympathy is not automatic. In a deeply divided political environment, people who spent years telling others to stop complaining may find that the same advice is now being directed back at them. And that may be the most difficult lesson of all. Political movements can create strong feelings of unity and certainty. But when real life changes, or when real life challenges arrive, slogans alone rarely provide solutions. And the true test comes not during rallies or elections, but when supporters evaluate whether the outcomes match the promises they were asked to believe. Yes. Thank you so much for watching. All credit belongs to the original creators of the video. This video is meant for educational purposes and commentary purposes. See you in the next one.